Okay then, in today's video, I'm going to go over one of the best methods to beat the Nightmare DREGGODYNE raid solo. So with that being said, let's get into it. First, let's go over the team. The first Loomian is going to be Wabalisk, which can actually completely solo the DREGGODYNE raid from start to finish. We're going to want to run a clever personality paired up with 200 health and range defense TPs to maximize our range bulk, while our ability keeps us safe from the DREGGODYNE stat increases. The 88 speed TPs will let us outspeed the level 55 Nightmare DREGGODYNE, which has 104 speed. Then for the moves, we have Power Focus to set up to deal more damage, while Luster Loot and Health Amulet keeps us healthy, and Frostbeam is mostly just here to speed up the process a little bit. Although, even though you can solo the raid with Wabalisk, if you lead off with it, you are at risk of fainting due to dazes and critical hits if you get unlucky, so I would actually recommend using Wabalisk as your last failsafe Loomian. The next Loomian that we're actually going to be using as our lead is Onyx, although I have heard a lot of people talk about Mortiel and Jelusa, which can actually fill this slot that we're using for Onyx. But the set that we're using is a very clever personality with 200 health and range defense TPs to maximize our range bulk, and then for the moves we have Magnify to increase our damage output, Luster Loot and our Health Amulet keeps us healthy, and then we have Nova Blast to output huge damage, although we're only going to want to use this move if we're on full health, otherwise it's too risky, and then we have Square 1 for later in the run if the DREGGODYNE gets a little too difficult to handle with multiple stat increases like +4 melee attack and range attack stat. We're not really looking to take that on. The ability doesn't really matter, although Radiant should be a little bit more useful, I just didn't have one. And the last Loomian I have is Soulburst Eruptodon, but I've heard that people are also using Soulburst Dakuda as well. Eruptodon is just easier to get your hands on. We're running 200 range attack TPs with a very smart personality to hit as hard as possible, even more so with the Pyro Pro ability, with the 200 range defense and 96 health TPs to increase our overall range bulk. Also, we just barely outspeed the DREGGODYNE without any speed investment, we just need 40 speed UPs. And then for the moves, we're running Magnify to increase our damage output, and Fire Breath as our attacking move, but we'll mostly be sticking to our soul move, Hellstorm. And now for the strategy. We're going to want to lead off with Onyx and we'll want to set up 2 Magnifies. After that, if we're full health, we can go for Nova Blast to remove the first health segment, although if we're not full health, we can use a Luster Loot over 2 turns to wipe it out while also healing. Once the first health segment is done, the DREGGODYNE should clear our stat increases, unless it got poisoned by our random teammate, which if that's the case we can just take it down to the second health segment. And then from here on out, we're going to want to cycle between Magnify and Rest if we're above about 110 health, and Luster Loot if we're under that to heal. The goal is to try and get Onyx to +6 with Magnify, so we can deal as much damage as possible, and once the DREGGODYNE increases its attack stats by 2 stages, we'll want to just start spamming Luster Loot to prevent being 2-hit KO'd. And once the DREGGODYNE increases its attacking stats to 4 stages, we can still spam Luster Loot, although if the DREGGODYNE is already pretty weak, we can just choose to Square 1 to reset all of the stat increases on the field, and we can let Onyx faint to get our Eruptodon on the field safely. Eruptodon, once soul bursted, will always live a hit from DREGGODYNE if it doesn't have any stat increases, unless it gets a critical hit, so we'll always be able to use 2 moves. The safer play is definitely to Hellstorm and then Fire Breath, but I'm just playing it risky here by using Magnify and then a Hellstorm. And because we removed DREGGODYNE stat increases, this will do a lot of initial damage just from using the move, and then over the next 2 turns DREGGODYNE will take damage thanks to the secondary effect Hellstorm has. And once Eruptodon faints, we can go into Wabalisk, which can then set up with Power Focus and then go for Luster Loot to keep healthy, and if we're healthy enough we can go for Frostbeam to speed up the process. Although, if you get unlucky with Onyx and it faints pretty early on, like I simulated here, we'll want to proceed with the plan as usual, go into the Eruptodon to deal as much damage as possible before the DREGGODYNE starts getting stat increases, and then we can go into Wabalisk once the Eruptodon faints to start setting up Power Focuses, which the goal is to try and get to +6 range attacks, we can deal as much damage as possible, and then we can cycle between Luster Loot and Frostbeam to solo the DREGGODYNE raids. This method can be pretty slow since we're using it to solo the raid. Who would have thought that 1v1ing the boss is slower than 2v1ing it, but because of Wabalisk the failure rate is practically 0, Even if we get critical hitted or dazed on Wabblisk, it shouldn't really matter unless it happens multiple times in a row. That's just how good Wabblisk actually is. But of course, to prevent that from happening, it is better to use Wabblisk as late in the battle as possible to reduce the chances of it actually happening. Also, let me know down in the comments any other Loomians that you would recommend over Charonix and Soulburst Eruptodon, and hopefully people that don't want to go out of the way to get them might already have a Loomian that you recommend, so get them into the raids as fast as possible.